The iPad glowed in the darkness of our living room, casting blue light across my face as I scrolled through messages that weren't meant for me. Ember had left it unlocked on the coffee table, probably another one of those careless moments that had become her trademark lately. The message thread with someone named Nate made my stomach clench. Can't wait for our trip, babe. 2 weeks in paradise, just us. You deserve so much better than what you have now. I set the device down carefully, exactly where I'd found it. The hardwood floor creaked under my feet as I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and waited. Ember would be home soon from her late meeting at the advertising agency, the same agency where this Nate character apparently worked. The key turned in the lock at 11:47 p.m. I'd been sitting in the dark for 3 hours, thinking, planning. Ember stumbled in, her heels clicking against the floor, designer purse sliding off her shoulder. "Soren, why are all the lights off?" She flipped the switch, illuminating our pristine condo with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline. Everything was exactly as we'd arranged it 2 years ago when we moved in together. Clean lines, expensive furniture, the kind of place that looked perfect in photos. "Just thinking," I said, not moving from the couch. "How was work?" She kicked off her heels and ran a hand through her auburn hair. "Long day, you know how it is." The lie came so easily, I almost admired her for it. Almost. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Ember walked to the kitchen island, keeping distance between us. "The vacation we planned for next month? The one to Costa Rica?" I nodded. The vacation I'd spent 6 months planning. The one I'd paid for entirely with my project management bonus. The one that was supposed to save our relationship. "I'm going to be spending that time with someone from the office instead. Nate Carmichael. We've been working closely on the Morrison campaign, and he needs the break too." She said it like she was discussing dinner plans, casual and matter-of-fact. I leaned back into the couch cushions, studying her face. "That's your choice," I said quietly. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a reaction. "I mean, we can take another trip later, maybe somewhere closer. This is just better timing for me professionally." "I understand." I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the city lights. "When do you leave?" "Friday morning, early flight." There was relief in her voice now, like she'd expected me to fight her on this, to make a scene, to beg. "That's your choice," I repeated, turning back to face her. "I hope you have a wonderful time." Ember's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset? You've made your decision." I walked past her toward the bedroom. "I'm tired. Long day at the office myself." She called after me as I reached the hallway. "Soren, are you sure you're okay with this?" I paused at the doorway, not turning around. "Absolutely. Enjoy your vacation, Ember. You deserve it." That night, I lay in bed listening to her breathe beside me, staring at the ceiling and running through everything in my head. The late nights at work that had started 3 months ago, the way she'd become protective of her phone, the new clothes, the different perfume, the way she looked right through me when I tried to start conversations. I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, maybe. Hurt, definitely. But not surprised. What Ember didn't understand was that I'd spent 15 years in project management. I knew how to plan. I knew how to execute. And I knew how to manage risk. She thought she was calling the shots. She thought she was in control of this situation. She had no idea what she'd just set in motion. Friday morning came with gray Seattle drizzle against the windows. Ember was up early, packing her suitcase with clothes I'd never seen her wear around me. Bright sundresses, bikinis with the tags still on, a new pair of sandals that probably cost more than most people's rent. "The car will be here in 20 minutes, she said, not looking at me as she zipped up her luggage. "I left my flight details on the kitchen counter in case you need them for some reason." I was sitting at the edge of our bed, already dressed for work. Have a safe trip. She finally looked at me then, and for just a moment, I saw something that might have been guilt flicker across her face. Soren, I know this seems sudden, but you don't owe me an explanation. I stood up and straightened my tie. You're an adult. You can make your own choices. The Uber notification chimed on her phone. She grabbed her suitcase handle and headed for the door, then stopped. I'll call you when I land. If you want to. She left without saying goodbye. I waited exactly 10 minutes after her car pulled away before I started moving. The first thing I did was change the door codes on our smart lock system. The second was to log into our shared credit card account and freeze the card she'd taken with her. The third was to call the building management and have her removed from the lease portal. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. The beauty of dating someone who lived their entire life online was that they left digital footprints everywhere. Ember's work cloud account was still logged in on our shared computer. Her email was synced to the tablet she'd forgotten to take. Her location services were turned on across all her devices, and she'd never bothered to change the family sharing settings that let me see exactly where she was at any given moment. I pulled up the building's resident portal and downloaded 3 months of entry logs. Ember's key card showed her leaving the building at 6:30 a.m. and returning at 11:45 p.m. On nights, she claimed to be working late. But her office badge logs, which I accessed through her work account, showed her leaving the agency at 5:30 p.m. on those same nights. 6 hours unaccounted for. 6 hours that lined up perfectly with check-in times at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, based on the credit card statements I'd been ignoring for weeks. I made copies of everything: screenshots, PDFs, printed documents. I organized them by date and time, cross-referenced locations, built a timeline that would make any prosecutor proud. By lunchtime, I'd scheduled movers to come Monday morning. I'd transferred the Costa Rica vacation package entirely into Ember's name, adding a note in the reservation system confirming her personal guest arrangement. I'd forwarded all her mail and packages to a storage unit I'd rented in her name across town. Then I sat back and waited. The first call came at 2:15 p.m. Soren, my credit card isn't working. The hotel says it was declined. Her voice was tight with embarrassment. That's strange. Maybe call the bank? I tried. They said the account was frozen by the primary cardholder. A pause. That's you. Huh. I didn't freeze anything. Maybe it's a security measure? You know how they get about unusual spending patterns. Soren, I'm standing in a hotel lobby in Costa Rica with a declined credit card. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're resourceful. The line went quiet for a long moment. Can you unfreeze it? I'm in the middle of a client meeting. I'll look into it later. Later? Soren, I have to go. Enjoy your vacation. I hung up and turned off my phone. The weekend passed in blissful silence. I ordered takeout, caught up on sleep, and started boxing up Ember's belongings with methodical precision. Her clothes went into labeled containers. Her books, her decorative items, her collection of expensive skincare products that cluttered our bathroom counter. Everything packed away neatly and efficiently. Monday morning, the movers arrived exactly on time. Professional, discreet, efficient. They loaded everything into their truck while I supervised with a clipboard and a cup of coffee. Storage unit address? The crew chief asked. I handed him the paperwork. Everything's prepaid for 6 months. The renter will need to show ID to access it. By noon, the condo looked completely different. Cleaner, more spacious, like a weight had been lifted from every room. That's when my phone started ringing. Soren, what the hell is going on? Ember's voice was shrill with panic. I came back early and my key doesn't work. The doorman says I'm not on the lease anymore. Where are my things? I was sitting at my desk at work, reviewing project timelines like it was any other Monday. Your things are safe. They're in a storage unit on Pine Street. Unit 247, You'll need to show ID. Storage unit? You moved my stuff to a storage unit? I figured you'd want your own space when you got back. You seem pretty clear about wanting to make changes. I never said I was moving out. You didn't say you weren't. I clicked through emails while we talked. The storage is paid for 6 months. Should give you time to figure out your next steps. My next steps. Soren, this is insane. You can't just throw me out of my own home. It's not your home anymore. You're not on the lease. I had you removed Friday afternoon. I kept my voice level, professional. I assumed you'd discussed living arrangements with Nate before you left. Silence. Then, how do you know about Nate? Lucky guess. More silence. I could hear her breathing, probably trying to figure out her next move. This is illegal. You can't just evict someone without notice. I'm not evicting you. You chose to leave. I just made it permanent. I minimized my email and opened a spreadsheet. The storage unit has all your belongings. Your mail is being forwarded there. Everything you need to start fresh. Start fresh? Soren, I made one mistake. You made a choice. I'm just respecting it. She hung up on me. Tuesday morning brought the first real counterattack. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from friends, family members, and coworkers. Ember had spent the night crafting her narrative, and it was a masterpiece of manipulation. According to the story making rounds on social media, I'd kicked her out for refusing to cut ties with a male colleague I was irrationally jealous of. She'd posted screenshots of text conversations taken out of context, photos of her belongings stacked by the elevator, and a tearful video explaining how she'd come home from a work trip to find herself locked out and homeless. The performance was Oscar-worthy. She managed to look vulnerable and wronged while carefully avoiding any mention of hotels, vacation packages, or the fact that her work trip had involved bikinis and romantic dinners. My phone buzzed with a call from Maya, my younger sister and the only lawyer in the family I actually trusted. Soren, what the hell is happening? Mom just called me crying about some Facebook post where Ember says you threw her out for talking to another man. That's one way to describe it. What's the real way to describe it? I walked to my kitchen window and looked down at the street below. She told me she was taking the vacation I paid for and spending it with her coworker instead of me. I said that was her choice. Then I made some choices of my own. Maya was quiet for a moment. Please tell me you didn't do anything illegal. Everything I did was completely legal. I removed her from a lease she wasn't financially responsible for. I froze a credit card account where I was the primary holder. I packed her belongings and put them in a storage unit in her name. And the work trip? 2 weeks in Costa Rica with her boyfriend. I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, and a timeline that shows she's been having an affair for at least 3 months. Jesus, Soren, why didn't you just confront her? Because this way is better. Maya sighed. She's already filed a complaint with the police about the credit card thing. Says you're trying to control her finances. Let her file. I have documentation for everything. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I'd been building. Maya, I need you to look at something. Can you come over tonight? This is really what you want to do? Burn it all down instead of just walking away? I thought about that for a moment. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. Wednesday brought escalation. Ember had enlisted her best friend Petra Singh, who worked in HR at the same agency, to help coordinate her campaign. Together they'd crafted a story that painted me as a controlling, manipulative partner who'd financially abused her and thrown her out in retaliation for maintaining professional relationships. The story was spreading. I was getting cold shoulders from mutual friends, suspicious looks from neighbors, and my own mother had called to ask if I needed professional help dealing with my anger issues. It was expertly done. Ember understood social dynamics better than anyone I'd ever met. She knew exactly which buttons to push, which details to emphasize, how to position herself as the victim while making me look like the aggressor. but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd involved Petra. That evening, Maya came over with a bottle of wine and a legal pad full of questions. I spread out everything I'd collected across the dining room table. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, building logs, work badge records, text message screenshots, email printouts. This is... Maya picked up a hotel invoice and studied it. This is incredibly thorough. I'm good at my job. She flipped through the timeline I'd constructed. These dates line up perfectly. Every time she said she was working late, she was actually at the Fairmont with Nate, sometimes the Westin, once at the Four Seasons, but I think that was a special occasion. Maya set down the papers and looked at me. Soren, this is enough to prove she was lying about everything. Why haven't you released this? Because I'm not done yet. What do you mean you're not done? I opened my laptop and showed her the research I'd been doing on Petra Singh. Ember's friend in HR? The one who's been backing up her story and spreading rumors about me being abusive? Maya leaned in to read the screen. What about her? She's been covering for office affairs for years. I found 3 separate incidents where she helped employees hide relationships that violated company policy, including one case where she falsified documents to protect someone who was embezzling expense accounts to pay for hotel rooms. How did you find this? Public records, court filings, LinkedIn connections. Amazing what you can piece together when you have time and motivation. I clicked through several documents. Petra isn't just Ember's friend. She's been actively facilitating this whole thing. She booked their hotel rooms through fake expense reports. She created false meeting schedules to give them alibis. She even helped Nate transfer to Ember's project team so they'd have more opportunities to work together. Maya sat back in her chair. This is bigger than just an affair. Much bigger. And tomorrow, everyone's going to know about it. Thursday morning, I uploaded everything. Not to social media. That would have been messy and emotional. Instead, I sent a carefully organized package to 3 specific recipients: Ember's parents, the senior partners at her advertising agency, and the compliance department that oversaw HR practices. The package included a cover letter explaining that I'd discovered evidence of policy violations and potential fraud at the agency, along with a complete timeline of the affair, documentation of Petra's involvement, and copies of every hotel receipt and falsified expense report I'd been able to track down. I sent it from my work email with a professional subject line: compliance concern, policy violations, and potential fraud. Then I went to the gym. Kenji Park had been running the same boxing gym for 20 years, and it showed. The place smelled like sweat and old leather, with speed bags that had been patched more times than anyone could count, and a heavy bag that could absorb punishment that would break a lesser man's hands. You look like you need to hit something, Kenji said when I walked in. That obvious? You've been coming here every day this week. Usually you show up twice a month. He tossed me a pair of gloves. What's eating you? I told him while I wrapped my hands. The whole story, from beginning to end. Kenji listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting in acknowledgement. So what happens now? He asked when I finished. Now I wait. And if she tries to hit back? I pulled on the gloves and faced the heavy bag. Then I hit harder. The first punch felt good. The second felt better. By the time I'd worked through my anger, my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat. My phone had been buzzing in my locker for the past hour. 17 missed calls from Ember, 4 from Petra, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 from Maya. I called my sister back first. It started, she said without preamble. Ember's been fired. Petra's been suspended pending investigation. And according to my friend who works downtown, there's a very angry pregnant woman looking for someone named Nate Carmichael. Pregnant woman. Apparently your boy Nate forgot to mention he was married. His wife found out about the affair when the agency called her asking about hotel charges on his expense account. I sat down on the gym's front steps, suddenly feeling very tired. I didn't know he was married. Well, he is, and she's about 6 months along from what I heard. The weight of that hit me harder than I'd expected. I'd been so focused on getting revenge on Ember and exposing the truth that I hadn't considered all the collateral damage. Some pregnant woman I'd never met was having her world destroyed because of information I'd provided. Maya, did I just ruin an innocent person's life? No, Soren. Nate did that when he decided to cheat on his pregnant wife. You just made sure she found out about it. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was all just consequences catching up with people who'd made bad choices. But sitting there in the late afternoon light, watching normal people walk by living their normal lives, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd started something I wasn't sure I could control. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Ember. I typed back. No, we don't. Please. I know you're angry, but this has gone too far. I'm not angry, I'm just done. Soren, please. I made a mistake. People are getting hurt who don't deserve it. I stared at that message for a long time before responding. That's your choice too. Then I turned off my phone and walked home. Friday brought chaos. It began quietly enough, the kind of quiet that feels wrong in hindsight. When I stepped into the lobby that morning, the air felt heavier than usual, charged with something unresolved. Ember was sitting rigidly on one of the leather chairs, elbows braced on her knees, fingers laced together so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked like someone who'd been worn down by hours of bad decisions and no sleep, eyes dull, skin sallow, movements just a fraction too slow. Her usually immaculate appearance was gone. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, flyaways sticking out at odd angles, and she was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago. Frank hovered behind the desk, clearly uncomfortable, and gave me an apologetic look as I approached, as if he were sorry for something he couldn't fix. She's been here since 6 a.m., he said quietly. Says she needs to talk to you. Ember stood up when she saw me, the movement abrupt, desperate. Soren, please, just 5 minutes. You're not supposed to be here. This is private property, and you're not a resident anymore. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears, like it belonged to someone else. I know you're angry. I'm not angry. I walked past her toward the elevator, deliberately not breaking stride. I'm indifferent. She followed me anyway, footsteps echoing too loudly in the open space. Her voice grew sharper, edged with panic. Nate's wife is in the hospital. The stress from finding out about the affair triggered early labor. She might lose the baby. That stopped me. The words landed hard, cutting through everything else. I turned around slowly, studying her face, searching for exaggeration and finding only fear. And you're telling me this because? Because this is insane, she said, her voice breaking. You've destroyed 3 people's lives over a vacation. I've destroyed 3 people's lives? I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice, feeling something cold and precise take hold. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You had an affair. Nate cheated on his pregnant wife. Petra helped you both commit fraud. And somehow I'm responsible for the consequences. You didn't have to expose everything. You could have just broken up with me. You're right, I could have. I pressed the elevator button, the soft chime sounding final. But that's not the choice I made. The elevator doors opened. Ember grabbed my arm as I stepped inside, her grip tight and trembling. Soren, please, I'm begging you, make it stop. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face at the raw fear there. Let go of me. She did, immediately, as if burned. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. Figure it out, I said quietly. You're smart, you're resourceful, and you're very good at manipulating situations to your advantage. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. The elevator doors slid shut between us, sealing off her silence. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to the storage unit where Ember's belongings were kept, the long rows of identical metal doors stretching out like a filing system for abandoned lives. I unlocked her unit and added one more box to her collection, setting it carefully among the rest. Inside that box were copies of everything I'd discovered, organized and labeled with obsessive clarity, along with a detailed timeline and a letter explaining exactly how I'd uncovered the truth. It felt less like an act of revenge and more like closing a ledger. Then I sent Ember a text with the storage unit address and a simple message. Your complete file is in the box marked evidence. Do with it what you want. She called me immediately. Her voice was sharp, suspicious. What kind of game are you playing? No game, I said. You want this to stop? There's everything I have. All the evidence, all the documentation, all the research. You can destroy it, release it, whatever you want. It's your choice now. There was a pause, then softer. Why would you give this to me? Because I'm tired of being the villain in your story. You want control back? Take it. I hung up and drove to Kenji's gym, the familiar smell of rubber mats and disinfectant grounding me in a way nothing else had lately. You sure about this? He asked after I explained what I'd done, leaning against the counter, studying me carefully. No, I admitted, but I'm sure about what happens if I don't. What's that? I become someone I don't want to be. Kenji nodded slowly. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away. Maybe, I said. We'll see if she's smart enough to take the exit I just gave her. Monday morning, I got my answer. Instead of destroying the evidence or keeping quiet, Ember had done something I hadn't expected. She'd taken everything I'd compiled and added her own narrative to it, creating a comprehensive document that painted both of us as victims of Petra's manipulation. According to Ember's new version of events, Petra had orchestrated the entire affair as part of a long-term plan to damage my reputation and advance her own position at the agency. She'd manipulated Ember into the relationship with Nate, helped cover it up to create leverage, and then planned to expose everything at the right moment to maximize the fallout. It was brilliant, creative, and almost entirely fabricated. But it was also believable enough that several people who'd been shunning me started reaching out to apologize, their messages awkward, tentative, full of conditional regret. The problem was, some of it was actually true. Tuesday afternoon, Maya called with news that changed everything. I did some digging into Petra Singh's background, she said. Turns out she has a history with you that goes back further than you thought. What do you mean? Remember that consulting project you worked on 3 years ago? The one where you exposed the billing irregularities that got several people terminated? I did remember. It had been a routine audit that uncovered systematic fraud. Several employees had been terminated, and the company had implemented new oversight procedures. What about it? Petra Singh was one of the people who got fired. She was working in their HR department under her maiden name, Petra Williams. She blamed you specifically for ruining her career. The pieces started falling into place, clicking together with sickening clarity. She got hired at Ember's company after that. 6 months later, and guess whose reference she used? A forged letter of recommendation that made it look like you'd personally endorsed her for the position. I sat down heavily, the weight of it pressing into my chest. She's been planning this for 3 years. It gets worse. I found records showing she specifically requested to be assigned to employee relations cases involving romantic relationships. She's been collecting information on office affairs and using it to manipulate people for years. And Ember? Was probably a target from the moment Petra found out she was dating you. This whole thing, the affair, the vacation, the public humiliation, it was all designed to destroy your reputation and make you look like an abusive partner. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Maya, if this is true, then Ember really was manipulated. She's not the villain here. No, she's not. But she's also not entirely innocent. Petra may have created the opportunity and encouraged the affair, but Ember still made the choice to cheat. She still chose to lie to you for months. So what do I do now? That depends. How much do you want to hurt the person who actually deserves it? Wednesday night, I met Ember at a coffee shop downtown. She looked better than she had in the lobby, showered, wearing clean clothes, her hair styled, but the dark circles under her eyes were still there, stubborn and deep. She cradled her cup like it was the only thing holding her upright. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said as I sat down across from her. "Maya told me about Petra's history, about the consulting project." Ember nodded slowly. "I didn't know. I swear to you I had no idea she was planning any of this." "But you did have an affair." "Yes." She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together. "I did. And I lied to you about it for months." "Why?" "Because I was unhappy. And instead of talking to you about it, I let Petra convince me that you were the problem. She kept telling me I deserved better, that I was too good for someone who didn't appreciate me." Ember looked up at me, eyes shining but steady. She made it seem like the affair was justified, like you had it coming. "And you believed her." I wanted to believe her. It was easier than admitting I was just bored and selfish and looking for excitement in the wrong place. We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop was nearly empty, just a few students with laptops and a barista cleaning equipment behind the counter. "What happens now?" Ember asked. "I don't know. A week ago, I thought you were the enemy. Now I find out you were being manipulated by someone with a 3-year grudge against me." I rubbed my temples. "But you still cheated. You still lied. You still chose to hurt me instead of just ending our relationship." "I know. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am genuinely sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the last 3 months of wondering what I did wrong. Sorry doesn't give Nate's wife back her peace of mind or her healthy pregnancy." Ember flinched. "The baby's okay. She delivered early, but the baby's healthy. And Nate's wife filed for divorce. She's taking everything. Good for her. Soren, I know you have every right to hate me, but Petra is still out there. She's still manipulating people, still ruining lives. What she did to us, she's probably done to other people." I studied Ember's face. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we finish what you started, but this time, we do it right. We go after the person who actually deserves it." "Together?" "If you can stand to be in the same room with me long enough to take her down, yes." I thought about it. The smart thing would be to walk away, cut my losses, move on, let Petra fade into the background of my life. But the smart thing wasn't always the right thing. "What did you have in mind?" Ember leaned forward. "I still have access to some of the agency's systems. Petra thinks I'm completely discredited, so she's not being careful anymore. She's been bragging to people about how she handled our situation." "Bragging how?" "She told someone in accounting that she'd been planning to destroy your reputation for years, and that manipulating me into the affair was just the first step. She was planning to use the scandal to get you fired from your job, ruin your professional reputation, maybe even file false charges against you. Can you prove that?" "Not yet, but I think I can get her to admit it if she thinks she's safe." I considered this. It's risky. If she figures out what you're doing, then we're no worse off than we are now. But if it works, we can expose her for what she really is, and maybe prevent her from doing this to other people. And what do you get out of it? Your reputation is already ruined. Your job is already gone. Ember was quiet for a long moment. Maybe I get to do one thing right in this whole mess. Maybe I get to stop someone else from going through what we went through. Or maybe you're still manipulating me. Maybe I am. You'll have to decide if you trust me enough to find out. I finished my coffee and stood up. I'll think about it. Soren? She caught my arm gently as I turned to leave. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Not just about getting caught. About all of it. I looked down at her hand on my arm, the same gesture she'd made in the lobby, but somehow different this time. Less desperate. More genuine. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. Thursday morning, I made my decision. I called Ember and told her I was in. Not because I trusted her completely, and not because I'd forgiven her, but because Petra Singh had been destroying lives for years and needed to be stopped. We met at a diner in Fremont to plan our approach. Ember had printed out organizational charts, email chains, and personnel files she'd managed to access before her termination was finalized. Petra's been sloppy since the agency suspended her, Ember explained, spreading papers across the table between us. She thinks she won. She thinks you're discredited and I'm too humiliated to fight back. What's her end game? She's been positioning herself as the whistleblower who exposed corruption in the agency. She's claiming she discovered the affair and reported it through proper channels, and that the agency retaliated against her for doing her job. I studied the documents. That's actually pretty smart. She gets to look like the hero while we look like the villains. Exactly, and it's working. She's already got a job interview lined up with Morrison Industries, the same client Nate and I were working on. She's using the scandal as proof of her integrity and commitment to ethical business practices. So how do we prove she orchestrated the whole thing? Ember pulled out her phone. She's been texting me, gloating, basically. Look at this. She showed me a series of messages from Petra, sent over the past few days. Hope you learned your lesson about crossing the wrong people. Soren always thought he was so smart. Guess he found out different. You should thank me. I saved you from wasting more time with that loser. Next time, pick your friends more carefully. I handed the phone back. She's definitely not being subtle. It gets better. She wants to meet with me tonight. Says she has a proposition that could help me get my life back together. That sounds like a trap. Probably, but it's also an opportunity. Ember leaned forward. What if I wear a wire, get her to admit what she did? That's illegal in Washington without consent from both parties. Not if we're in public. And not if she's confessing to crimes. I shook my head. Too risky. If she figures out you're recording her, she could claim harassment, intimidation, any number of things. The words hung between us, while the low murmur of the cafe continued around our table. I could see Ember chewing on the inside of her cheek, that tell she had when anxiety and frustration collided. She drummed her fingers once against her cup, then stilled them, forcing herself to listen. So, what do you suggest? I thought about it while I finished my coffee, letting the bitterness ground me. Outside the window, traffic crept past, headlights flickering like restless eyes. Petra's patterns replayed themselves in my mind, every calculated move, every indulgent risk she'd taken when she thought she was untouchable. Where does she want to meet? Rooftop bar at the Thompson Hotel, 9 p.m. Public place, lots of witnesses, ambient noise that would make recording difficult anyway. I made a decision, feeling it settle with a quiet certainty. What if we don't try to trick her? What if we just confront her directly? Both of us? Both of us. She's expecting you to show up alone, defeated, ready to beg for her help. Instead, you show up with me, and we lay out everything we know. Ember leaned back, skepticism written plainly across her face. What makes you think she'll admit to anything? Because she's arrogant. She's been planning this for 3 years, and she thinks she's won. People like that can't resist explaining how clever they've been. And if she denies everything, then we walk away and try something else. But I don't think she will. I think she's been waiting for the chance to tell someone how she pulled this off. That evening, we arrived at the Thompsons separately. I got there first and positioned myself at a corner table with a clear view of the rooftop entrance, the city spread out below like a glittering map of opportunities and mistakes. The air was cool, scented with citrus and alcohol, and the music pulsed softly beneath conversation. Ember arrived exactly at 9, looking nervous but determined, her shoulders squared in a way that told me she'd already committed to seeing this through. Petra showed up 15 minutes late, dressed in an expensive suit and carrying herself like she owned the place. She was a small woman with sharp features and calculating eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her, already deciding how each piece might be useful. I watched her scan the rooftop until she spotted Ember at a table near the railing. They talked for a few minutes. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Petra's body language change from confident to confused when Ember didn't respond the way she'd expected. The easy lean forward stiffened, the indulgent smile tightened. Then Ember gestured toward my table, and Petra's head snapped around to look at me. I stood up and walked over to join them, feeling the familiar steadiness that came when a plan finally moved into action. "Hello, Petra," I said, pulling out a chair. "Mind if I sit down?" Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally a forced smile. "Soren, what a surprise." "I'm sure it is." I sat down and signaled the waitress for a drink. "Ember tells me you have a proposition for her." I was just offering some friendly advice, helping her figure out her next steps. "How generous of you, especially considering you're the reason she needs next steps in the first place." Petra's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I think you know exactly what I mean, but let me spell it out anyway." I pulled out a folder and set it on the table, the soft thud louder than it should have been. 3 years ago, you were terminated from Morrison Consulting for billing fraud. The investigation that led to your termination was one I conducted. Ancient history. Not so ancient. You used a forged reference letter with my name on it to get hired at Ember's agency. You specifically requested assignment to cases involving workplace relationships, and you've been planning revenge against me ever since. Petra picked up her drink and took a slow sip, buying herself time. "That's an interesting theory. Can you prove any of it?" "Actually, yes." I opened the folder and pulled out several documents, sliding them across the table one by one. "Forged reference letter with my signature. Handwriting analysis will prove it's fake. Personnel records showing your request for specific case assignments. Email logs showing you've been monitoring my social media and professional activities for 3 years. Monitoring is a strong word. I prefer keeping tabs." Ember leaned forward, her voice steady despite the tension coiling through her. "So you admit it?" "I admit I kept track of someone who cost me my career. That's not illegal. But manipulating me into an affair is," Ember said, "setting up fake meetings, booking hotel rooms through fraudulent expense reports, encouraging me to lie to my boyfriend. That crosses several legal lines." Petra set down her drink and really looked at us for the first time, as if reassessing the board. "You two are working together now? How touching." "Answer the question," I said. "What question?" "Whether I encouraged Ember to pursue her own happiness instead of staying trapped in a boring relationship with someone who didn't appreciate her?" Petra shrugged. "Guilty as charged." "What about the expense reports, the fake meeting schedules, the hotel bookings?" "Ember's a grown woman. If she chose to falsify documents to cover up her affair, that's on her." "Except I have emails showing you helped her do it," Ember said quietly. "Step-by-step instructions on how to manipulate the booking system, how to create fake client meetings, how to coordinate schedules with Nate." For the first time, Petra's confidence wavered slightly, a crack she couldn't quite hide. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Ember pulled out her phone and scrolled to a saved email. Quote, "Use the Morrison client code for hotel bookings. It's a big enough account that no one will question individual charges. Schedule the fake meetings for late afternoon so you have an excuse to be out of the office. And make sure Nate's calendar shows the same meeting location in case anyone asks." End quote. Petra stared at the phone screen, her face pale under the rooftop lights. "Where did you get that?" From my email archive, the one I backed up before the agency terminated me. Ember put the phone away. I have dozens of messages like that, all from you, all giving me detailed instructions on how to commit fraud. You asked for my help, after you spent months convincing me that my relationship was toxic and I deserved better. After you introduced me to Nate and suggested we'd make a good team. After you created opportunities for us to work together and planted the idea that maybe our relationship could be more than professional. Petra looked back and forth between us, clearly trying to figure out her best play. Even if that's true, and I'm not admitting anything, you still chose to have the affair. You still chose to lie and cheat and hurt someone who trusted you. You're right, Ember said. I did make those choices, but I made them based on information and encouragement you provided. Information that was designed to manipulate me into doing exactly what you wanted. And what did I want exactly? I leaned back in my chair. You wanted to destroy my reputation. You wanted me to look like an abusive, controlling partner who drove his girlfriend into the arms of another man. You wanted me fired, discredited, maybe even charged with domestic abuse or stalking. Petra was quiet for a long moment, studying both of our faces. Then she started laughing. You know what? You're absolutely right. That's exactly what I wanted. She picked up her drink again, her confidence returning. And I almost got it too. For a few days there, everyone thought you were a monster. Your own family was questioning whether you'd lost your mind. Why? Ember asked. What did he ever do to you that was worth destroying 3 people's lives? He cost me everything. Petra's voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself and looked around to make sure no one was staring. I had a good job, a good reputation, a career I'd worked 10 years to build. Then he shows up with his little audit and decides I'm a criminal. You were embezzling money, I pointed out. I was borrowing money. I always paid it back. After you got caught. The point is, I paid it back. But did that matter? No. You had to make an example of me. You had to destroy my career to prove how thorough and ethical you were. I studied her face. You really believe that, don't you? You really think you were the victim. I know I was the victim, and I spent 3 years planning the perfect revenge. She smiled coldly. I have to admit, you almost ruined it when you turned the tables on Ember. I thought you'd just roll over and take it like the passive little man you always seemed to be. Sorry to disappoint you. Oh, you didn't disappoint me. You made it more interesting. Watching you systematically destroy your own girlfriend's life was actually pretty impressive. I couldn't have done it better myself. Ember flinched. Thanks. But here's the thing, Petra continued. None of this matters. You can't prove I did anything illegal. Encouraging someone to pursue a relationship isn't a crime. Giving advice on office procedures isn't fraud. And even if it was, who's going to believe either of you? You're a vindictive ex-boyfriend and a discredited cheater. I'm the HR professional who tried to help and got caught in the crossfire. She finished her drink and stood up. Enjoy your little revenge fantasy, but in the real world I win. She turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back at us. Oh, and Ember, the job interview I have tomorrow, it's with Morrison Industries, your old client. They specifically requested me because they were so impressed with how I handled the difficult situation at your agency. So thanks for that. After she left, Ember and I sat in silence for several minutes, watching the city lights twinkle below us. She's right, isn't she? Ember finally said. We can't prove anything. And even if we could, who would believe us? Maybe, but she made one mistake. What's that? I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording app. She confessed to everything, in detail, with witnesses. Ember stared at me. You recorded that? Audio only, and it's legal because we were in a public place and she was confessing to crimes. I saved the file and attached it to an email. This goes to the agency's legal department, the State Bar Association, and the district attorney's office. Let them decide if she did anything illegal. Will it be enough? I don't know, but it's a start. I stood up and left money on the table for our drinks. Come on, we have work to do. The recording changed everything, but not in the way I'd expected. Friday morning, I got a call from Maya with an update that shifted the entire landscape of our situation. The district attorney's office is very interested in your recording, she said. Turns out Petra Singh has been on their radar for a while. What do you mean? Remember how I said she had a history of manipulating office relationships? Well, it's worse than we thought. They've been investigating her for running what's basically an extortion racket. I sat down at my kitchen table, suddenly feeling like I needed coffee. Extortion? She identifies people having affairs or other compromising relationships, helps them cover it up initially, then threatens to expose them unless they pay her or do favors for her. Maya paused. Soren, they think she's been doing this for years, at multiple companies. How many people are we talking about? At least a dozen that they know of, probably more. The recording you made is the first time anyone's gotten her to actually admit to manipulating people into compromising situations. I thought about Nate's pregnant wife, about all the other families that might have been destroyed by Petra's schemes. What happens now? Now they build a case, and they want to talk to you and Ember about testifying. Testifying. Grand jury first, then potentially a trial. This could be big, Soren. Like front-page news big. After Maya hung up, I called Ember to fill her in. She listened in silence, then asked the question I'd been dreading. What does this mean for us? I don't know. We're going to be linked together in this whole mess for months, maybe years. Court appearances, depositions, media attention if it goes to trial. That's not what I meant. I knew what she meant. Ember, I can work with you to stop Petra. I can even forgive you for the affair eventually. But I can't forget it. And I can't go back to pretending everything's fine between us. I wasn't asking you to. I wanted to know where we stand. We stand as two people who got manipulated by someone with a 3-year grudge and a serious personality disorder. We're going to help make sure she can't do it to anyone else. After that, I honestly don't know. Fair enough. That weekend, Ember and I spent hours with federal investigators, going through every detail of Petra's manipulation. It was exhausting and humiliating, but also strangely therapeutic. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like we were fighting the right enemy. Monday brought news that Petra had been arrested at her job interview with Morrison Industries. Apparently, the federal agents had been waiting for her in the lobby. The image of her being led away in handcuffs in front of the same executives she'd been trying to impress was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. But the real vindication came Tuesday morning when the agency called to offer Ember her job back. They're claiming it was all a misunderstanding, she told me over coffee, that they acted too hastily based on incomplete information. Are you going to take it? I don't think so. Too many people there saw me at my worst, too much damage to repair. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. I think I need a fresh start somewhere else. What about Nate? What about him? He made his choices. He's dealing with the consequences. His wife left him, he's facing potential charges for the expense account fraud, and his reputation in the industry is finished. She looked up at me. I feel bad for his wife and the baby. But Nate? He gets what he deserves. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. It was strange how easy it was to talk to her now that we weren't trying to save our relationship or destroy each other. Can I ask you something? Ember said eventually. Sure. When you first found out about the affair, what was your plan? I mean, before you knew about Petra's involvement. I thought about that. Honestly, I just wanted you to face consequences. I wanted you to understand that actions have results, and that you couldn't just hurt people and walk away without any cost. Mission accomplished. Yeah, but it doesn't feel the way I thought it would. I thought I'd feel satisfied, vindicated. Instead, I mostly just feel tired. Revenge is exhausting, Ember said. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. What do you mean? She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. The affair wasn't just about being bored or wanting excitement. Part of it was about hurting you. Hurting me? You were so calm about everything, so controlled. Even when we fought, you never raised your voice, never lost your temper. I started to feel like nothing I did mattered to you, like you didn't care enough about me to get upset. I stared at her. So you cheated on me to make me angry? Not consciously, but looking back, yeah. I think part of me wanted to see you lose control, wanted to know that I could affect you that strongly. She shook her head. It's messed up, I know. It's messed up, I agreed. But it's also honest. More honest than you've been with me in months. Too little? Too late? Probably. But it's something. Wednesday brought the news that Petra had been denied bail. The federal prosecutor argued that she was a flight risk and had demonstrated a pattern of manipulating and intimidating witnesses. She'd be staying in jail until trial. Thursday, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Is this Soren Valden?" "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I was married to Nate Carmichael." A pause. "I wanted to thank you." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm sorry about what happened to your family. I never intended—" "You saved my life," she interrupted. "I mean that literally. I was married to a man who was stealing from his company to pay for hotel rooms with other women, who was lying to me every day, who was exposing me to God knows what diseases." Her voice was steady, controlled. "If you hadn't exposed him, I might have spent years living a lie. I'm glad you're okay. And your baby? She's perfect, healthy, and she's going to grow up knowing her mother doesn't settle for men who treat her like garbage." After she hung up, I sat in my apartment looking out at the city and thinking about consequences, about choices and revenge, and the difference between justice and vindication. My phone buzzed with a text from Ember. Petra's lawyer wants to make a deal. She's offering to provide information about other victims in exchange for a reduced sentence. I texted back, "Good, let her help clean up the mess she made." "What about us? Are we good?" I thought about that for a long time before responding. We're not good, but we're not enemies anymore either. We're just two people who survived something terrible and came out the other side. I can live with that. So can I. Friday afternoon, I was cleaning out my desk at work when my manager stopped by. "Heard about the whole situation with your girlfriend," he said. "Hell of a thing." Ex-girlfriend. And yeah, it's been complicated. Well, for what it's worth, the way you handled it was impressive. Professional, thorough, never let it affect your work here. He paused. "We've got a new project starting up next month. Big client, complex situation, needs someone who can stay calm under pressure. Interested?" "What kind of project?" "Corporate fraud investigation. Apparently there's a whole network of people running schemes similar to what happened to you. The client specifically requested you based on your reputation for being thorough and discreet." I looked around my office, at the orderly files and clean desk, at the life I'd built through careful planning and methodical execution. A life that had been nearly destroyed by someone else's 3-year revenge plot. "When do I start?" "Monday morning. And Soren? There's a significant raise involved. Hazard pay, you might say." That evening, I met Ember one last time at the same coffee shop where we'd planned our confrontation with Petra. She looked different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I got a job offer," she said. "Marketing director at a nonprofit in Portland. Fresh start, good cause, people who don't know anything about the scandal." "You're moving to Portland?" "Next month. I need to get out of Seattle, away from all the reminders." She paused. "What about you? What's next?" I told her about the new job, about the corporate fraud investigation, about the strange turn my career was taking. "From victim to investigator," she said. "There's a certain poetry to that. I guess. Mostly it just feels like work." We sat quietly for a while, two people who'd been through hell together and somehow made it out the other side. "Soren?" Ember said finally. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be good at this, helping people who've been manipulated and lied to. You understand what it feels like. We both do." "Yeah, but you handled it better. You stayed focused, stayed rational. You didn't let it destroy you." "It almost did. There were moments when I wanted to do things that would have ruined my life just to hurt you back. But you didn't." "No, I didn't. But it was close." She reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "Thank you. For not destroying me when you could have. For working with me instead of against me when we figured out the truth. For being better than I deserved." I looked down at her hand on mine, then back at her face. "You're welcome." She pulled her hand back and stood up. "I should go. Early flight tomorrow to look at apartments. Good luck in Portland." "Good luck with the new job." She walked away without looking back, and I watched her go, not with sadness or regret, but with something like relief. We'd both survived. We'd both learned something, and we were both moving on to whatever came next. I finished my coffee and walked home through the Seattle drizzle, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange ways that revenge can transform into something that looks almost like justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Petra's trial date is set for 6 months from now. You ready for this?" I typed back, "I'm ready." And for the first time in months, I actually meant it. The story ends there, with no neat resolution or happy ending. Just two people who'd been manipulated by a master manipulator, who'd hurt each other in response, and who'd finally found a way to work together against their real enemy. Petra Singh would eventually be convicted on multiple counts of fraud and extortion. She'd serve 3 years in federal prison and be required to pay restitution to her victims. Her scheme had affected 17 people across 4 companies, destroying marriages, careers, and lives in service of her twisted need for revenge. Nate Carmichael pled guilty to expense account fraud and received probation and community service. His ex-wife moved across the country with their daughter and started over. He eventually found work as a junior account executive at a small firm that didn't do background checks. Ember took the job in Portland and slowly rebuilt her life. We exchanged holiday cards for a few years, polite updates on our respective careers and accomplishments. She eventually married a social worker and had 2 kids. As far as I know, she's happy. And me? I became very good at investigating corporate fraud, very good at spotting the signs of manipulation and extortion, very good at helping people who'd been victimized by schemes like Petra's. I never married Ember. I never forgave her completely. But I never hated her either. Sometimes the best revenge is just making sure the right person pays the price. Sometimes it's just walking away and building something better. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's both.